G'day guys! I'm back with another video. This is going to be my first impressions, what I like, what I dislike. It's basically going to be a rant video, or rambling video. I don't know if it's classed as a rant. It'll be a lot of rambling. So if you're here for that, stick around. Right. First of all, I am absolutely loving the game. The visuals are incredible. The new mechanics with the dodge rolling and the slower paced, more tactical way to play. I'm really enjoying that as well. Go over some of the negatives first of all, because everyone loves some drama and negativity. We know you do. So let's get over that first. The loot. Now the loot is not quite tuned to what I would prefer. Currently, you can go through an entire map without seeing one rare item, which is kind of crazy and very much is adding to the difficulty and a lot of the complaints around the fact that it's so difficult to get upgrades to allow you to progress. And with a lot of the encounters requiring certain gear to pass, for example, the Act 1 boss is very heavy cold damage. If you don't have cold resistances, there's a good chance you just will not be able to beat that boss. You need to work around the resistances and the type of encounters you face. And if you can't find the loot within a reasonable amount of time, then that's obviously going to upset a lot of people and annoy a lot of people. Now, I've been really lucky finding resistance rings, and that has helped me with a lot of the boss fights. I've actually started carrying around these resistance rings in my inventory at all times, so when I need to hop on some more fire resistance to fight a particularly tough fire mob, I have that there available. And a lot of people haven't been that lucky. Now I'm also at a point, I'm coming to the end of Act 2, about 20 hours played, and I'm finding my gear isn't good enough. So I'm currently grinding gear, which ironically, probably intended. Grinding gear in some zones to try and disenchant them, to use the disassembling bench to get materials so I can get better gear, and then doing the gamble mechanic with the vendor that sells unknown items. I have gotten more upgrades through the unknown item vendor than I have from drops, and to me, I think that is a problem. You need to be able to get upgrades more frequently with the drop pool. So that's the first issue I have at the moment. Obviously, as a player, there is ways around that, like the vendor I've said, but I don't think it should be that way. When it comes to like action RPGs, finding good loot out in the world from things you kill is kind of part of the draw. It's part of what makes ARPGs great, having that dopamine hit when you find that amazing item spawn in. On that note, I also think the unique drops are more impactful because of the current state. I don't know if that will change things if they improve the loot pool or not. But when we get a unique item drop, it's just like, yes, what is it? And a lot of times they have been upgrades, which has been amazing. My next opinion is dodge rolling. I love dodge rolling. I think it's a great mechanic. As a lot of you long-time viewers know, I am quite the Souls game addict. I've played pretty much all of the Souls games except for Bloodborne because it's not on PC and they need to release it on PC. Now, anyway, I played a lot of Souls games. I am no stranger to dodge rolls and a difficult mechanic. But a lot of these dodge mechanics in those games work really well because they have a period of no clipping. So for those who don't know what no clipping is, basically if you can dodge through enemies, which allows you to get out of very dangerous situations, prevents you from being surrounded, and makes you a little bit more survivable when stuff really does go down. Unfortunately, Path of Exile 2 does not have that no-clip dodge mechanic. So when you're rolling, it will path you around an enemy, as in your character will actually visually roll around the enemy if you try to do that. And obviously that is not possible if there's no way to go around the enemy. It also adds a couple of extra frames, maybe an extra second, to that dodge mechanic, where you are, well, essentially locked out of playing because you have to get that extra second of dodging around things instead of just going straight through them, like most games do. I would love if they added the no-clip feature to the dodge roll. I know Path of Exile 1 had phasing as a mechanic. If they just add phasing, like a second phasing to dodge rolls, I could see that fixing a lot of the issues I have with the dodge rolls. But overall, I think it's a great mechanic. I'm playing primarily a mercenary, which is using a crossbow, crazy enough. And most of the time, I'm just backpedaling, I'm moving around, I'm positioning myself where I won't actually need to use the dodge. But when I do need to use it, it's good to have. And it would also be, like, instinctually, I try to dodge through enemies, just because I have my years and years and years of built up playing Souls games. I try to dodge through enemies and I can't do it, and it's frustrating. Next gripe is respecing. Now, we had a taste of this in Settlers of Kalgur in Path of Exile 1, where they added respecing to one of the settlers to allow you to spend gold to respec your character. Now, I thought it was way too goddamn expensive in Settlers of Kalgur, and unfortunately, that has not changed in Path of Exile 2. There is an extreme amount of gold you need to respec your character, and if you mess up by like maybe even 5 nodes, if you mess up 5 nodes and you need to respec 5 nodes, boy, will you be spending at least an hour or 2 grinding to get that gold to reset those nodes. And I just think that's very much a detriment. I do understand why it is in the game, because they want to make the player actually think and plan out their builds. But I think the balance of respecs per hour kind of calculations are a bit off. I think they need to reduce that cost. I think it's just a quality of life feature that will make things a lot more fun in the long run and a lot less punishing to people who make a mistake in their build, which is going to be a lot of people because this is a brand new game and how things work together are slightly different than Path of Exile, and that's okay. You should be able to make mistakes without losing hours to trying to respec. My next gripe, let's see, I have a list. I made a list. Ascendancies. So, they've, as far as I can tell, have removed the Ascendancy trials completely. So it's no longer how you would do the Ascendancy trial in Path of Exile 1. which is it was fine. Having dodged traps and then fight a boss and only having one life. Wasn't my favorite thing to do. I'm not a big labs player, but it wasn't bad. Now, I am one of the people. I'm not alone. I absolutely hated the Sanctum League mechanic. I was not a fan. I hated the fact that you get a temporary health pool that is not related to your tree for the character that you built. It has nothing to do with it. So you don't get any benefits from your character apart from its damage output and how that damage is then put out there. Which sucks. Don't like it. So at the moment, there's two ways to get your Ascendancy. There is through the Sanctum mechanic, which you can access in Act 2. And apparently there's also the Ultimatum mechanic, which you can access in Act 3. Now, I am still in Act 2, but I have tried the Sanctum maybe 5 separate times. And each time, I've either gotten overwhelmed from a certain spawning mechanic. Specifically, there's one where there's 4 spawn gates, constantly spawning waves of enemies, and then there's one really, really tanky boss mob in the middle of that 4 spawn gates. So you have to contend with a tanky boss mob and a wave of enemies. You quickly get overrun, and it's almost impossible to avoid taking damage. I believe there was one point where I swear there was at least 50 mobs on the screen in this very small area, and the objective is to destroy the gates. But I couldn't get to the gates because there was 50 mobs between me and the gates. And obviously that took down my temporary HP, which is called Honor. And I did manage to complete that section, but then I went on to the next section with 14 Honor or 14 temporary health points, which obviously didn't go well for the rest of the Sanctum. And something I just really, really don't like. I don't like the fact that I can't use my potions. I can't heal this temporary health points. I can't. I have to just avoid everything. And this is obviously a lot worse for melee-focused builds, because they have to be up close and personal. A lot of the builds are built around mitigating damage, and you can't mitigate the damage when it comes to the Honor. If you get hit, it decreases no matter what happens. So unfortunately, that is a mechanic I really, really don't like. And I know once I get to Act 3, it is highly unlikely I'll be able to survive the Ultimatum mechanic with the build I'm going, because it's going to be a very squishy build. So I'm just going to keep on trying with the Sanctum, maybe level up a bit more to get more damage output, because that's really the only thing that applies in the Sanctums, as far as I'm aware. Next issue I have is the enemy respawning mechanics. So when you die, all the enemies on the area that you died in prior post a checkpoint, and this is very important, post checkpoint, will be respawned. Now this works really well with the boss fights. I like the fact that you go into a boss fight, if you fail, the boss will reset. You cannot just brute force the boss like you could in Path of Exile 1. But it really does suck when you fight a boss and you lose, or you go to one area, you die, and then you have to redo the killing for that area again, or that section of the map. Because the maps are so big, this kind of compounds the issue. the maps are a little bit smaller, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because obviously there would be less mobs and less area for you to traverse before you get another checkpoint. So because the maps are so big, which I actually really enjoy, I love the fact that the maps are big. I know a lot of people don't, but that's actually something I like it. I like exploring. And I just don't like having to fight the same mobs again if I mess one thing up. And it's pretty easy to mess one thing up in this game. This is a hard game. It's definitely designed for a hardcore audience. It's definitely no brain dead game, which I think is what's causing a lot of negativity on the PoE forums. You go there and oh my god, there's just a cesspit of this game's hard. What have you done with PoE? You've ruined the game. Like, oh my god. And a majority of critiques are not particularly valid. A lot of them, they have features in the game that are obviously not being used by the people who are complaining. And then you get those posts. But enough of that. I think that's it for my negatives so far. Obviously this is early impressions after 20 hours of playtime. Now, going on the bosses. Oh my god, the bosses. They are absolutely incredible. I'm sad I do not have any B-roll of bosses. I should have thought about this, but I do not have any B-rolls of bosses. So sorry about that, but some of the boss fights are just awe-inspiring. I fought a boss in Act 2 recently. I'll try not to do too many spoilers, but it was basically a giant. Kind of similar to the Kitava fight in Path of Exile 1. But it kept you on your toes. You had to dodge projectiles that were slow enough moving that you could easily just avoid them. You had to dodge large sweeping attacks, large, very heavy, small AoE attacks. If you get hit by that, you're pretty much dead. It's a one-shot most of the time. And then you have to... There was a mechanic where the enemy attacked and put its sword in the center of the zone. And I'm slow. I did not get the mechanic right away, and I died instantly. But you're actually meant to use that sword as a shield to prevent a massive AoE blast from hitting you. And I thought that was amazing. I felt really stupid for not figuring it out as fast enough, but I thought that was absolutely incredible. The scale of the fight was just... it was epic. That's probably the best word I could think. And then going back to one of the first boss fights, the Mud Pit. I stupidly, the Mud Pit was the first place I went. Now this is probably not a good idea because the Mud Pit's kind of tough. I don't think you're meant to hit the Mud Pit straight away from town, but I did. Boy, was it rough. You have a giant devourer who's coming in and out of the ground, shooting you with things, and then spawning other little mobs. And the devourer's body actually becomes makeshift walls that you can use to completely avoid attacks. Actually, having the mob attack itself and not you. I thought that was really cool. And then having one of the parts of the bodies turn out to be the tail that starts whipping you. So you got to be careful which one you hide behind. And that was one of the first bosses I encountered. And I'm gonna remember that boss fight for years. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And I like that you have to prepare. You have to prepare for boss fights. If you see a boss fight that you cannot do, and you have he does a certain element type or a mix of elements types, you need to like prepare for that. If you're getting like facing a wall with them, you got to go over checklists. How's your gear? Are you doing enough damage? How's your build balance? Do you have the resistances required to mitigate a lot of the incoming damage? If any of those aren't up to par, then you go back and grind, which is the name of the company, Grinding Gear Games. And I think that's always been their goal, to like have a game where you grind to overcome these obstacles, which would be the bosses, and I think that's incredible. Whereas other, like Path of Exile 2, 1, sorry, you could literally just brute force bosses. I know when I was like rushing Act 1, for example, with one of my characters, I would just go to Mervale room, I would just run in, do as much damage as possible until I died, respawn outside, go back in, run in, do as much damage until I died, until she was dead. That's not a thing in Path of Exile 2. It's not a thing at all, because the bosses reset and they start again from their mechanics. And you have to learn the fight to overcome the fight. And I think that's, coming from a Souls background, but playing so many Souls games, I just love that. I love learning the patterns. I love learning the fights so I can overcome them. Next positive, I think the pacing. Now, a lot of I'm only on Act 2, 20 hours in. I think that in itself tells you how much more stuff there is, but also how much slower the pacing is than Path of Exile 1. Like, I'd be in Act 3 or 4. No, actually 20 hours in, I would be completed the story and like well into maps within 20 hours. Well into maps. But in Path of Exile 2, I'm still in Act 2. It's crazy, and I'm loving every moment of it. It's going to be interesting though with the league mechanics. If they plan on doing similar leagues, like Path of Exile 1, where there's like a new league mechanic added every like 4 to 6 months or whatever. That's going to be interesting because there is so much to do in the campaign that when a new league comes out, people will be playing the campaign for like the first week of the league and not even hitting the endgame content. Well, most normal players, let's be honest. There's some streamers out there that'll smash it through in like a couple of days. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, whether there's going to be a lot of fatigue, which I 100% can see happening. Because if you release a league, like a 9 to 5 worker may have like 3 hours to play a day, it's going to take them like half the league just to get to endgame. It's gonna be interesting. We'll see how it goes. Now the world design itself, absolutely gorgeous, so pretty. You'll be seeing B-roll. There might be a little bit stuttery. There's a bug at the moment with DirectX 12, but they're working on that, so that's good. Now the environments are incredible. Like, they're so gorgeous. And the environmental storytelling that's around is so cool. For example, the forest. One of the B-rolls I'll be playing in the background, it will be a forest area full with the werewolves and stuff. In the forest, there's like these mushrooms that explode and stuff, and they're all spreading from this mushroom cave in the center of the forest, which plays a part in the storyline. But you don't go there until a little bit later. So you're walking around and it's like, where are these mushrooms coming from? They stand out so much from the contrast of the dark forest around them. And then you finally get down there and you see where they're coming from, and you clear the this mushroom cave and get rid of the the corrupting mushroom boss or whatever. I think that's really, really cool. And then you go into areas like one of the towns in Act 1, where you can see people have gone crazy and just massacred all the locals. And then you got like the locals actually coming back to life in their burnt state after being thrown on a burn pile. That's crazy to me, and I absolutely love it. There's so many other examples that I could say, but like this video could be like got hours if I glaze it anymore, you know. There's absolutely a lot of stuff that can be improved, and that is the whole point of the betas, is to test things and improve upon them. What I don't think will happen, I don't think the game will be made too much easier. A lot of complaints are coming in saying that the game's too hard, it's a slog, this isn't Path of Exile, it's too difficult. But having been here from the start, I donated, not donated, I think the donation is the wrong word, because I did receive value in return in the form of cosmetics and such. So when I purchased a supporter, or multiple supporter packs, back when they were still in the garage, where was I going with it? I've gone on a ramble. Right, back then their vision was pretty clear. They wanted to make a hardcore game inspired by Diablo 2 for a hardcore audience, because there wasn't anything like that on the market at the time. Now, they achieved an absolutely incredible ARPG in Path of Exile 1. But a lot of the hardcoreness came from the pinnacle bosses, and just the being able to grind the higher tier maps. The actual process of getting to that point was putting mechanic bloat aside, because that was definitely prevalent in PoE. Putting that aside, it was pretty easy to get from level 1 to maps. It was just a time. Like, you're not gonna, if you had a decent build, you're not gonna have any issue whatsoever. It was a relatively easy experience, and the difficulty came later. But I think with Path of Exile 1, now they had the funding from being purchased by Tencent. I believe it was Tencent. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Tencent. But being purchased by a large company has given them freedom to do more things. And their experience creating Path of Exile over the 10 years has given them a chance to actually create a game that's closer to their original vision, which is a hardcore experience for hardcore players. And I think that's what they're going for, which is obviously causing issues with a lot of people who want a more casual game where they can just turn off their brain. Like, you could literally turn off your brain in Path of Exile 1, even mapping. You would just have a one button character and just, you could turn it into a walking simulator if you had certain builds. And you just walk through the map, pick up the loot. That's not a thing. There is no way in hell you can just walk through a zone on Path of Exile 2 without getting absolutely surrounded and destroyed. And I like that. So my thoughts? I'm loving it so far. There is issues. They will be fixed, I very much hope. And I do hope they take into player feedback. But I really don't hope they dumb down the game to fit the casual audience. And I honestly don't think they will. But if they do, I will be a bit upset. And a lot of other players will be upset to cater to that audience. Like, there's plenty other games out there to cater to that audience. I don't think it should be a Path of Exile. And that may have a negative impact on their sales and such, but I think that's the game I want to play in the future, you know? That'll be the end of it. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble for 30 minutes. Holy hell, it's been 30 minutes. Stay tuned for some more Path of Exile stuff in the future. And thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.